by a wolf.
WRGW District Radio.
3 days ago, we bought what we thought was a puppy for the studio, and it ended up just being a baby wolf.
That was a wolf cub. Then it grew exponentially.
Yeah, it just grew, to its full size in under 12 hours, and then just leapt from its cage, just sprung from its cage.
Every day from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m.
I could see him right outside of the studio window. He's about 7 feet long, just a massive beast.
Yeah, he's a big fella.
Broadcasting on GWRadio.com.
Looks like we got another caller. Caller, go ahead.
That's the wolf. I'm done.
WRGW District Radio. Tune in all day and every day at GWRadio.com.
Hi, this is Lydia Slocum from Feeble Little Horse, and you're listening to WRGW District Radio.
Remember that songs can change the destiny of nations, even if it's only by
This is Arlo Guthrie. You're listening to WRG. What is it again?
You have to know the words.
WRGW.
Have the feeling.
That's easy. And you would think I could remember it.
Wait for it to come around again.
WRGW?
You got it.
This is Arlo Guthrie. You're listening to WRGW.
At Alice's Rest, except in Alice, you can get anything you want. At Alice's Restaurant, walk right in, it's around the back, just a half a mile.
My search history on Google is empanada, Danny Phantom, can you eat pasta on Passover, national animal of France, matzah, applicatorless tampon, and GWRadio.com.
We interrupt your regular broadcast to bring you this important news bulletin.
Coming to you live from Washington, D.C.
Run for your lives! Run for your lives!
Storming the airwaves, this is radio like you've never heard before. You're listening to WRGW, GWRadio.com.
That day, all female officers will be required to wear tiny miniskirts! When will this insanity end?
Pardon this. Tony Reale here from Around the Horn and Pardon the Interruption, and you're listening to WRGW, George Washington's radio station. Let's go, Colonial.
You are listening to WRGW District Radio.
Oh, baby, oh, baby, oh, baby.
Tune in all day and every day.
Good evening, folks. I'm your host, Henry Scriven-Young, and welcome back to Uptime, pure gaming, tunes and news, no cheat codes required, here on WRGW District Radio. I'd like to thank everyone who tuned in to the show last Friday, and a special thank you to everyone who has tuned in for tonight's show. So for those of you who don't know, Uptime is a music show where I play the soundtracks from video games. I'll also be throwing in some news and other fun bits, so sit back and relax as we jump into tonight's show. 1997. What an incredible year. 1997 brought us Hypnotized by the Notorious B.I.G., bucket hats, Beanie Babies, cycling shorts, and the popular video game The House of the Dead. Tonight's game fits this semester's themes perfectly. It's a horror game that is perfect for October. It had a remake made early last year, which uses the game's original soundtrack, and, thanks to director Hugh Ball, it was turned into a movie in 2003. The House of the Dead checks every possible box. Plus, the soundtrack is straight fire. For those unfamiliar with tonight's game, here's a quick rundown. The House of the Dead is a 1997 horror-themed light gun shooter arcade game developed by Sega AM1 and released by Sega. Players assume the role of agents Thomas Rogan and G as they combat an army of undead experiments created by mad scientist Dr. Kyrian. Players use a light gun to aim and shoot at approaching zombies. The character's pistols use magazines that hold 6 rounds, and players reload by shooting away from the screen. When a player sustains damage or shoots a civilian, 1 point of health is removed. The continue screen appears when all health is lost. If the player runs out of continues, the game is over. Throughout the game, players are faced with numerous situations in which their actions will affect the direction of gameplay. This is exemplified in the opening stage of the game when a hostage is about to be thrown from the bridge to his death. If the player saves the hostage, they'll enter the house directly through the front door. However, if the player fails to rescue the hostage, the character is redirected to an underground route through the sewers. A remake of the game was developed by Megapixel Studio and published by Forever Entertainment for Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Stadia, Windows, and Xbox One in April of 2022, for Xbox Series X and S in September of 2022, and for PlayStation 5 in January 2023. With all of that out of the way, let's get back to the music. All right, welcome back. And that was the boss theme loop. House of the Dead has much longer songs. So what you're going to hear, even though it may sound like a couple of songs kind of put together, what it really is going to be is it's going to be longer segments of what is known as looped music, but it's not inherently looped, but I'll talk about that. So that was boss theme loop. And that's actually one of the things that I really like about the House of the Dead is, right, this is one song. It's one really long song, frankly, but there is so much thought that is put into how the music returns to the main theme, how the music makes use of the kind of different elements and, the chorus and the refrain and how it comes back to, what the main theme is. And I think that's really cool because despite it being a loop, and again, I'm putting heavy air quotes around it, no one loop is the same, which is just absolutely fascinating. And it really is interesting, and it goes to show just how impressive video game music can be and has been, because this remake, of course, is made recently. It was made 2 years ago, but the actual soundtrack that the game is based on was made back in 1997, which was a very impressive feat back then. So although, the game is scary, right? But the use of guitar and the other instruments make it really exciting. I like that this soundtrack does something unique where it acknowledges, hey, okay, in this game, look, we're not trying to scare you with, tons of jump scares or this or that or the other thing. What we're trying to do is we're trying to raise your adrenaline. We're trying to give you that adrenaline rush feeling of oh no, what's around this corner? What's around that corner? And this soundtrack does that extremely well. It's really fast. It's staccato. It uses a lot of brass instruments, and it really blends that kind of what we now know as retro feeling with actual instruments and instrumentation really, really, really well. And it produces something that is very, very impressive. The use of the brass instruments I find to be really cool. It kind of sounds like a marching band, which kind of throws off my immersion a little bit, because when they do the whole they've got the I can only assume they're trombones or something, but they're playing and they sound really far away, and I'm sitting there and I'm my mind is am I hearing what was in a marching band? They're on the field. They're playing this segment of the music. It just makes me laugh. It throws off my immersion a little bit, but the use of the brass itself is very cool, right? I'm a big fan of music that uses live music. For example, when we did Super Mario Galaxy, I really, really, really like the fact that they used the string orchestra, right? So having live music is really good, but you've got to get that right vibe and that right impression. I think maybe moving the brass section a little closer or up in their microphones to make them feel a little closer might help with that. Maybe this is just a me thing. Maybe it's just my immersion and everybody else is vibing with their own immersion. I don't know. But point being, I'm a fan of this entire loop. I think it's really impressive and really incredible, but I wish that the brass was a little bit closer. Before we move on to our next section of music, I'd like to talk about our sponsor for today's episode of Exclamation Point Uptime. This episode of Exclamation Point Uptime is sponsored by Hearts for the Homeless. Hearts for the Homeless, or H4H, is GW's chapter of H4H, an international nonprofit organization that offers free blood pressure screenings. H4H also collects supplies like socks and blankets for the homeless community. These supplies are then sent to H4H and distributed to aid unhoused folks around the country. Studies show that the homeless population is the most susceptible to cardiovascular disease due to stress, inadequate access to health care, and inability to receive public health information. H4H aims to close these gaps in healthcare education for vulnerable populations through volunteer-based community outreach. If you have questions or would like to be involved, you can join via Engage or contact the official email at gw@h4hinternational.org. Again, that's gw@h4hinternational.org. Would you like to sponsor Exclamation Point Uptime? Well, each week I'll shout out, as I just did, a GW student organization. You can sponsor Exclamation Point Uptime by submitting the sponsorship form found on the Exclamation Point Uptime website. The form to submit is at sites.google.com/view/uptime-WRGW. Or you can head to my Instagram account where I have that website linked throughout my profile. A reminder that this is not financially compensated and is more of a shout-out type of thing to promote student organizations here at GW. Additionally, the Exclamation Point Uptime website has been updated since our last show, so I encourage all of you to take a look and explore the website while we take a quick break.
You're listening to WRGW.
Good morning, students of George Washington University. It's me, Andrew Jackson, Old Hickory, former president of these United States. And that means you gotta do what I say. And I say get drunk, bitches, burn the National Bank, and listen to WRGW.
Hello, peasant.
You're listening to WRGW.
Oh, great. Now you tell me.
Where there's always lots of fun.
Are you kidding?
And great music.
Lies and slander.
Tune in at gwradio.com.
Would you kindly shut your noise hole?
Fire and brimstone coming down from the sky. Rivers and seas boiling. The dead rising from the grave. Real wrath of God type stuff.
WRGW. gwradio.com. Washington.
Human sacrifice. Dogs and cats living together. Mass hysteria.
WRGW.
Washington. Please come again.
Keeps getting louder. Make the sound we broadcast as loud as possible. Turn up the volume on your receiver as high as it can go. Radio is not a mistake.
It's cool, baby. It's cool.
WRGW.
And welcome back to Exclamation Point Uptime here on WRGW District Radio. I'm your host, Henry Scriven-Young, and that was Chapter 3 Loop and Chapter Clear. So, starting with Chapter Clear, just because it was the most recent one we listened to, and it's also the shortest, I like it. I know it's simple, but this is one of those things that I am always a fan of when I hear them in, and I want to say like old retro, right? But even in like Zelda, where you get the doo-doo-doo-doo, it's nice to have a just kind of like upbeat, really interesting, hey, good job, you did it, you're a cool person, you know, that kind of music. I just like that, and I think this does a really good job. It's upbeat, it sounds good, and it fits with kind of what is happening. They don't do anything too like bizarre. It doesn't like pull out a saxophone and it's like, okay, here's something different that doesn't fit the theme. No, it's perfect. It's good. I like it. Chapter Clear is great. Chapter 3 Loop, it's good. It's not my favorite of the loops, and it's kind of because it really gives like DJ, like the like the pulsing in the background, the build-ups, the beat drops. I don't hate it. I'm just not a huge fan because it doesn't quite fit the theme of the House of the Dead. It really gives like, oh, I'm at a Halloween, I'm at a club, right? There's a DJ, it's Halloween, and this is what they're playing. I don't think anyone would bat an eye. I don't think they would bat a single eye if the DJ just started playing this and then walked away. Like people would just be like, yeah, this is so good, right? And you know, you gotta give it credit, right? You have the like ooh kind of stuff in the background. There are a lot less live instruments, and it's fine, right? It's good. I am a fan, but this one is more vibey than it is scary, and for me, that kind of pulls me out of the immersion, right? And I know the point isn't to be scary. It's to be fast. It's to get your heart racing. Like I talked about earlier, it's to get that kind of adrenaline rush feeling. You should be able to feel like you can run a marathon listening to this. But I would appreciate some level, just a little bit of horror, even if it's just like one short bit, right? Where it goes quiet and then gets loud maybe. I would just appreciate that. And the dynamics are actually pretty consistent throughout. It's loud, right? It's very strong. That in the music industry is what is known as forte. Actually, this is probably fortissimo. But it's loud. It's very strong. There are certain nuances, musical nuances in Chapter 3, but really throughout the soundtrack that I think a reimagined music score, a reimagined soundtrack would really make a better use of. Because, right, of course, this is 1997, right? Video games come in these arcade cabinets. There's only so much music you can put on them. There is, hundreds of people probably playing these things a day. And so you need music that sounds good really at any point and can be replicated pretty easily to go on all these different cartridges and all these cabinets, right? Fine, whatever. It doesn't need to be anything too crazy. But I bet a reimagining would sound really, really, really cool. And it's a shame that we don't have that, but that I would say is where really the entire soundtrack falls short. It's great. It's incredible. Don't get me wrong. But it's missing some of those musical nuances that maybe perhaps we take for granted in 2024 when we have, video games that have these beautiful, gorgeous soundtracks and people are like, oh, well, the graphics are only, whatever, when really part of what makes it good is the music. But again, to be clear, Chapter 3 Loop, really good, gives a DJ vibe, but I don't mind. A quick note here. House of the Dead received positive ratings from critics and players alike. It's been credited with popularizing zombie video games and repopularizing zombies in wider pop culture from the late 1990s onward. This popularity translated to an extensive list of sequels and a renewed interest in zombie films, which caused many to be created during the early 2000s. A global hit, House of the Dead was the second most successful arcade game in Japan during May of 1997. By 1998, 8,600 arcade cabinets had been sold and shipped worldwide. Computer and Video Games magazine called the game, quote, the best shooting game ever, end quote, giving it a solid 4 out of 5 stars. Today, thanks to the 2023 remake, that popularity has been revived once again. Whether it is the nostalgia, solid graphics, killer music, gameplay, or something else, everyone is raving about the House of the Dead again. The remake carries a price tag of $24.99, which is fairly reasonable for modern remakes in today's gaming industry, especially given the high quality of the game. If you decide not to pick up the game, be sure to give the soundtrack a full listen, because it is incredible. With that being said, let's move on to some more music. All right, and that was Magician's Theme Loop. This is another solid loop. Honestly, there isn't a ton to say about this one. It mostly combines what's great about the other loops, but it's good. It gets the job done. Really nothing special, nothing to write home about, but it's very solid. I like the callback to the original loop. It's cool how they kind of change it up, but add that kind of synthesizer-esque stuff over the top. Very neat. And the guitar on this one absolutely shreds. So it's good, but nothing to write home about. Moving into the news, this past week had a lot of incredible video game news in the form of updates and releases, so let's jump right into tonight's 2 stories. Our first story is from Sports Illustrated. Paramount and Saber Interactive are teaming up to make an Avatar: The Last Airbender RPG, set thousands of years before the animated series in the Avatar Legends universe. Avatar Studios will also collaborate with Paramount and Saber on the project. Quote, "We know loyal fans of Avatar: The Last Airbender have been eager for more stories that bring them into the universe of the show. And through gaming, we are able to expand the world building and allow fans to experience the new content in a completely immersive way," end quote. Doug Rosen, Paramount Senior Vice President of Games and Emerging Media, said in a press release. Saber said the Avatar: The Last Airbender RPG is still early in production, but hinted that it stars a new, never-before-seen Avatar. The player will strive to master all 4 elements as they play the game. Our second story is from Bloody Disgusting. Look, I hate horror games and films. They just get too scary, and usually I find the horror genre genuinely uncomfortable. But every once in a while, a game or movie will pique my interest. So I'll take a chance and just see what's what. Enter Amanda the Adventurer 2, the sequel to a terrifying puzzle-solving game focused on demons and a missing child. Out of the blue on October 10th, DreadXP announced that Amanda the Adventurer 2 will be coming to Steam on October 22nd, which is about 2 weeks away. There's already a demo out on Steam, but little more is known of the game beyond what's in the demo and the trailer. The only thing I do know is that I will be playing that game on October 22nd. And that's it for the news this week. As we move into the last 10 minutes of the show, I'd like to touch on the recordings. If you'd like to listen to Uptime's most recent episode, Alone in the Dark, you can find the recording on my YouTube channel and the Uptime website. Speaking of the website, be sure to fill out the special guest form, sponsorship form, and the show idea submission form. This episode of Uptime has been sponsored by Hearts for the Homeless. Hearts for the Homeless is GW's chapter of H4H, an international nonprofit organization that offers free blood pressure screenings. H4H also collects supplies like socks and blankets for the homeless community. H4H aims to close the gaps in healthcare, education for vulnerable populations through volunteer-based community outreach. If you have questions or would like to be involved, you can join via Engage or contact the official email at gw@h4hinternational.org. Again, that's gw@h4hinternational.org. Would you like to submit your student org for sponsorship? Well, check out the Uptime website. The form to submit is at sites.google.com/view/uptime-WRGW. I'd like to thank you all for listening in to tonight's episode of Uptime on WRGW District Radio. I'm your host, Henry Scriven-Young, and I will see everyone next week for Pure Gaming Tunes and News. No cheat codes required.
sports talk just a click away. Weekday.